Let's talk to the President's counselor right now, Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, thank you for joining us this morning. Do you endorse the President's tweets?
I like the fact that the President uses a social media platform to connect directly with Americans. And in this case, what Sarah Sanders said yesterday is true, that the President normally does not draw first blood. He is a counterpuncher, as he said on the campaign trail. And if you go back and you look at what is said about this President, a lack of policy coverage, there are personal attacks about his physicalities, about his fitness for office. He's called a goon, a thug, mentally ill, talking about dementia, armchair psychologists all over television every day. George, it doesn't help the American people to have a president covered in this light. I'm sorry, it's neither productive nor patriotic. The toxicity is over the top.
Kellyanne, as you know, all presidents are attacked. I worked for a president who was attacked mercilessly as well. That is very true. That what you're saying is not true. What I'm saying is, but let me just ask you, because you didn't quite answer the question, do you endorse what the president sent out in those tweets?
I endorse the president's right to fight back when he is being mercilessly attacked and when the airwaves are filled with raw sewage about him and his fitness for office. Why? Because even when you look at the network coverage, if in a 5-week period between May and June, 353 minutes spent on covering Russia, FBI, Comey, a totally fantastical hypothetical charade, and less than a minute spent on tax reform, 5 minutes spent on jobs.
Kellyanne, hold on a second. That was when the president had fired James Comey, when a special counsel was appointed, when the Senate Intelligence Committees were looking at that as well. But let me go back to something you said back in August, because during the primaries, you actually opposed President Trump because he had a pattern of personal insults. And I asked you about that back in August. Look. So what changed for you, and do you stand by those comments?
I do, and the reason is I don't like when people hurl personal insults. That will never change. That's not my style. I'm a mother of 4 small children. It'd be a terrible example for me to feel otherwise.
So isn't the president setting a terrible example now?
No, look, that's exactly what I'm saying to you, George, that the toxicity both ways, coming to the president, is terrible. And, you know, this is what's going on. The idea that the media are covering, large parts of the media anyway, are covering personal insults about the president, this invective, and really denying America's women their rightful knowledge on what he's doing for them on taxes,
Kellyanne,
on
as you know, we wouldn't be talking about this morning if the president hadn't sent out those tweets yesterday. There's no way we would be talking about that.
Respectfully, you would not be talking about tax reform because it was talked about for less than a minute on all of the networks for a 5-week period.
Well, the president actually hasn't come out with a tax reform plan, but that's besides the point right now.
You would not be talking about jobs. You keep interrupting me, George, and fairly to the American people, particularly women who tune into these shows to get information about what's going on for them. This is somebody who's trying to get those millions of women who lack health care coverage. This is a man who's trying to get tax relief and entrepreneurship freed up in this country for those American women who want that. And it doesn't get covered. It's just not covered. There's toxicity about this president.
Actually, we do cover it. We cover it quite a bit. We've led with health care every day this week up until this morning. How do you respond, though, to Nicole Wallace, a fellow Republican? She served in George W. Bush's White House, and she said, as someone who once proudly called myself a Republican, this party will permanently be associated with misogyny if leaders don't step up and demand a retraction.
Well, it's just not fair. You know, I work in that White House every single day, and I see a man who invites in Obamacare victims, mothers who lost their children to illegal immigrants who had multiple deportations and felony convictions but murdered their children anyway. He brings in people who are working on energy across the country. He brings in America's men and women to help them. And but for me saying it right now, we wouldn't hear about it. So nobody focuses on all the good he does. You know, the president sent out about roughly 160 tweets in the month of June. 120 or so of them were about policy, were about bilateral meetings with heads of state, were about all the things that he's doing to help the American people.
Kellyanne,
it gets very little coverage.
The problem you have right now is this is Republicans who are coming out with this criticism. It's Susan Collins. It's Lisa Murkowski. Those were the senators who were sitting next to him when he was trying to talk about health care the other day. Here's Pat Toomey, also trying to work very hard on health care right now. He's saying what the president is doing starts to undermine the president's ability to get his agenda done. He's getting in the way of his own agenda.
George, all of those senators ran on repealing and replacing Obamacare. Many of them voted to do it when we had a Democratic president. All that's changed in the last couple of years since those senators voted to do away with the Obamacare taxes and penalties is that we have a Republican president who can actually sign reform into law. So they need to do what they feel is best for their constituents. We're very confident that health care will get passed this summer and then followed by tax reform, and let me just say something else, since you showed a clip of me talking as a mother of 4. I've been attacked mercilessly. If you can look me straight in the eye and say you want your 2 daughters to be treated the way Kellyanne Conway has been treated, based on her gender and based on where she works and for whom, then I'll listen to you. But I don't fight. I don't respond in kind, because I'm here as a public servant trying to help people, and I swallowed a lot of bile over the time because I don't want this to be about me. But since you showed a clip about me, and since I have to look 4 children in the eye every day, I want them to see a president who's fighting for them. I didn't want them to have somebody who 62% of the country said was not honest or trustworthy to be their president.
Well, Kellyanne, that comes with the territory. As you know, I served in the White House as well. I was attacked as well. That just comes with the territory. That is not about gender. What I was asking you about is whether you endorse the president's comments, the president's attacks, and apparently you do.
No, I didn't say I endorse his attacks. I never said that, George. What I said was I endorse his ability to fight back when he is attacked. There's no good comes out of people attacking the president's physical and mental states on national television every day, to the exclusion of connecting Americans with information they need. And respectfully, I'm going to have to disagree that I've not been attacked because of my gender, including by people on the payroll of your network. But that's okay, because I'm here for bigger things. This is not about any one individual.
So bottom line, you do not endorse what the president said?
Information that they need.
Bottom line, you do not endorse the president's tweets?
I'm sorry, George, I couldn't hear.
Bottom line, you do not endorse the president's tweets?
Bottom line, I endorse his ability to connect on social media with Americans, and I endorse, as the First Lady has said, him firing back when he's being mercilessly attacked. The good I hope comes out of this is that we change the conversation, that respect for the office of the president and its current occupant are intact, and that we have a full conversation about policy. Let people disagree on policy, and stop the personal invective. It's completely toxic, and it's completely counterproductive to connecting America with policy prescriptions that they need.
Kellyanne, thank you. I would just say one more time, we would be leading with health care today if the president hadn't sent out those tweets. Thanks very much.
Health care will get done. Thanks.
Another Republican Senator, Ben Sasse, said it best. Please just stop. This isn't normal. Just stop.
Who once proudly called myself a Republican, this party will permanently be associated with misogyny if leaders don't step up and demand a retraction.
Well, it's just not fair. You know, I work in that White House every single day, and I see a man who invites in Obamacare victims, mothers who lost their children to illegal immigrants who had multiple deportations and felony convictions but murdered their children anyway. He brings in people who are working on energy across the country. He brings in America's men and women to help them. And but for me saying it right now, we wouldn't hear about it. So nobody focuses on all the good he does. You know, the president sent out about roughly 160 tweets in the month of June. 120 or so of them were about policy, were about bilateral meetings with heads of state, were about all the things that he's doing to help the American people.
Kellyanne,
it gets very little coverage.
The problem you have right now is this is Republicans who are coming out with this criticism. It's Susan Collins, it's Lisa Murkowski. Those were the senators who were sitting next to him when he was trying to talk about health care the other day. Here's Pat Toomey, also trying to work very hard on health care right now. He's saying what the president is doing starts to undermine the president's ability to get his agenda done. He's getting in the way of his own agenda.
George, all of those senators ran on repealing and replacing Obamacare. Many of them voted to do it when we had a Democratic president. All that's changed in the last couple of years since those senators voted to do away with the Obamacare taxes and penalties is that we have a Republican president who can actually sign reform into law. So they need to do what they feel is best for their constituents. We're very confident that health care will get passed this summer and then followed by tax reform. And let me just say something else, since you showed a clip of me talking as a mother of 4. I've been attacked mercilessly. If you can look me straight in the eye and say you want your 2 daughters to be treated the way Kellyanne Conway has been treated, based on her gender and based on where she works and for whom, then I'll listen to you. But I don't fight. I don't respond in kind, because I'm here as a public servant trying to help people, and I swallowed a lot of bile over the time because I don't want this to be about me. But since you showed a clip about me, and since I have to look 4 children in the eye every day, I want them to see a president who's fighting for them. I didn't want them to have somebody who 62% of the country said was not honest or trustworthy to be their president. Are covering personal insults about the president, this invective, and really denying America's women their rightful knowledge on what he's doing for them on taxes,
Kellyanne,
on
as you know,
healthcare,
we wouldn't be talking about this morning if the president hadn't sent out those tweets yesterday. There's no way we would be. There's no way we would be talking about that.
Respectfully, you would not be talking about tax reform because it was talked about for less than a minute on all of the networks for a 5-week period.
Well, the president actually hasn't come out with a tax reform plan, but that's besides the point right now.
You would not be talking about jobs. You keep interrupting me, George, and fairly to the American people, particularly women who tune into these shows to get information about what's going on for them. This is somebody who's trying to get those millions of women who lack health care coverage. This is a man who's trying to get tax relief and entrepreneurship freed up in this country for those American women who want that. And it doesn't get covered. It's just not covered. There's toxicity about this president.
Actually, we do cover it. We cover it quite a bit. We've led with health care every day this week up until this morning. How do you respond, though, to Nicole Wallace, a fellow Republican? She served in George W. Bush's White House, and she said, as someone, let's talk to the president's counselor right now, Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, thank you for joining us this morning. Do you endorse the president's tweets?
I like the fact that the president uses a social media platform to connect directly with Americans. And in this case, what Sarah Sanders said yesterday is true, that the president normally does not draw first blood. He is a counterpuncher, as he said on the campaign trail. And if you go back and you look at what is said about this president, a lack of policy coverage, there are personal attacks about his physicalities, about his fitness for office. He's called a goon, a thug, mentally ill, talking about dementia, armchair psychologists all over television every day. George, it doesn't help the American people to have a president covered in this light. I'm sorry, it's neither productive nor patriotic. The toxicity is over the top.
Kellyanne, as you know, all presidents are attacked. I worked for a president who was attacked mercilessly as well. That is very true. What you're saying is not true. What I'm saying is, but let me just ask you, because you didn't quite answer the question, do you endorse what the president sent out in those tweets?
I endorse the president's right to fight back when he is being mercilessly attacked and when the airwaves are filled with raw sewage about him and his fitness for office. Why? Because even when you look at the network coverage, if in a 5-week period between May and June, 353 minutes spent on covering Russia, FBI, Comey, a totally fantastical hypothetical charade, and less than a minute spent on tax reform, 5 minutes spent on jobs.
Kellyanne, hold on a second. That was when the president had fired James Comey, when a special counsel was appointed, when the Senate Intelligence Committees were looking at that as well. But let me go back to something you said back in August, because during the primaries, you actually opposed President Trump because he had a pattern of personal insults. And I asked you about that back in August. Look. So what changed for you, and do you stand by those comments?
I do, and the reason is I don't like when people hurl personal insults. That will never change. That's not my style. I'm a mother of 4 small children. It'd be a terrible example for me to feel otherwise.
So isn't the president setting a terrible example now?
No, look, that's exactly what I'm saying to you, George, that the toxicity both ways, coming to the president, is terrible. And, you know, this is what's going on. The idea that the media are covering, large parts of the media, and